Hello and welcome. My name is Megan Reynolds, and today I'll be discussing with you the ethical implications of working women and maternity leave. Begin by going over our agenda. First, we'll do a brief introduction, then discuss relevant laws for maternity leave in the United States, review the legal evolution of those laws. After that, we'll get into the ethical implications. Finally, we'll discuss the U.S.'s continued progress and international standards with maternity leave. I'd like to begin by defining maternity and paternity leave. Both of these parental leaves are extended leaves to take care of a child after childbirth or adoption. Maternity leave refers specifically to a woman or a mother's leave, whereas paternity leave refers to a father or a man's leave, although both fall under that parental leave category. Now, to understand the need for these types of leaves and the relatively recent changes to legal policy, we need to discuss the changing labor force. As you can see in this chart here, the labor force percentage has changed significantly in the last 70 years. In 1945, 71% of the workforce was made up of men. 29% of the workforce was made up by women. However, in 2015, that gap has truly come together, where men make up 53% now and women make up 47%. Clearly, the climate in the United States has changed. Women are no longer exclusively responsible for staying home and watching over children, and so new laws were needed to protect a woman's right to work after childbirth. To get into some of these laws, the first is a Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which came about in 1978. Essentially, this act guarantees a pregnant woman the same health, disability, and sickness leave benefits as any other employee with a medical condition at their company. It applies to companies with 15 or more employees, and the specific details of this act are that you can't be fired due to pregnancy. Pregnant employees are allowed to work as long as they can perform the basic duties of their job. They can't be forced to take a mandatory maternity leave. They must be given modified or alternate tasks if possible, or disability leave if necessary. And finally, they are guaranteed job security during this leave, and they remain eligible for any of their same pay increases or benefits that they would have otherwise. Now, it's great that this policy included pregnancy along with other medical conditions. However, this law really is only as good as the individual policies of each company. So if a particular company has excellent medical leave and disability leave, then pregnancy would fall under that. But if the company didn't offer particularly good benefits or disability or medical leave, then pregnancy would fall right out of that. So in 1993, the Department of Labor developed a plan to look into what was currently happening in the country when it comes to medical leave, and they decided to create the Family Medical Leave Act, more often known as FMLA. In doing some research, they've had a number of findings that I'd like to discuss. The first is that the number of homes where both parents are working or where a single parent was working has increased significantly in recent decades. The second finding was that it's important in child development for the parents to participate in early child rearing. The third finding was that a lack of policy in the United States forced employees to choose between their job security and their family responsibilities. They also found that due to the current culture, the primary responsibility of childcare often falls on women. And finally, the Department of Labor acknowledged that any employment standard that applies to one gender but not the other only encourages employees to discriminate against that one gender. So with all of this in mind, they created the FMLA with very distinct purposes. The first purpose was to balance the demand of the workplace with the needs of the family. The second purpose was to entitle employees to take a reasonable leave of absence for medical reasons or for the birth or adoption of a child. And the third purpose was to do both of those things with the best interest of the employer, while also minimizing the potential for discrimination on the basis of gender. The specific details of this law go into that it applies to companies with more than 50 employees. Full-time employees, they need to have been there for more than a year and work more than 25 hours a week. The employees are guaranteed 12 weeks of unpaid job protection in any time within the first year after the birth of the child. Now, the employees must be guaranteed the same benefits throughout their leave, and when they return from the leave, they must be given either their same position or an equivalent position. It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same role, but it does need to be equivalent in pay, benefits, and any other term or condition, such as their shift, their location, other conditions like that. Now, given that was created in 1993, there have been some changes to the laws. So I'd like to discuss some legal evolution here. The first significant change to discuss was with the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act in 2010. Upon signing that act, there was an amendment to the FMLA in Section 7, which is known as the break time for nursing mothers. This break time for nursing mothers guaranteed mothers who were nursing two specific rights. The first is that they must be provided reasonable break time to express milk or to pump for up to 1 year after the child was born. The second stipulation is that the company must provide a place for this to happen. It needs to be private, no room for interruption from other employees, and it can't be a bathroom. So they are required to give an employee time as well as a location for this nursing if the mother so chooses. However, in this same section, it does detail that employers are not required to pay for the time that the mother is spent nursing. The second evolution to discuss is the definition of in loco parentis. The FMLA essentially redefined the term parent to be now defined as the people responsible for the day-to-day and financial well-being of a child, rather than simply the biological parent. This includes grandparents, aunts and uncles, other legal guardians, and has most recently been amended to include same-sex couples. Finally, in Section 403, there is a specific detail that the FMLA highlights, and this is the encouragement of more generous leave policies. This section specifically states that the FMLA suggests and highly encourages companies to go above and beyond the minimum requirements of FMLA. So they go through to detail that the laws defined here of 12 weeks unpaid job protection is simply the legal bare minimum. Every employee is eligible for that. However, each company can do more to offer their employees better benefits, more leave, the option for pay, any of the other details that might entice the employees to work there. Now, next I'd like to get into some ethical implications of the FMLA and what's happening in our country right now. So, under FMLA, we do have equal rights. Both men and women are very specifically offered this parental leave. However, there's very unequal usage of this leave. You'll notice in this chart, this is actually taken from a study done by the U.S. Census of number of people on leave per month. So in 1994, if you'll look at the men's category first, they found that approximately 5,000 men per month in the U.S. were on leave. Now in 2015, that number went up to 22,000. So we're looking at a little more than a 400% increase, which is significant. Now, if you look to the women's columns, hopefully you'll see that it has not changed much since 1994, but it's obviously significantly higher. This has remained steady at 273,000 women a month on leave. So we can see from this that obviously women are still assuming the primary responsibility for raising children in the US. So despite the public support for gender equality, clearly the majority of Americans are still practicing an unequal policy in their own homes. Now, if you think about what this really shows us, it's that there's so much opportunity for discrimination regardless of what the law says. In a lot of companies, even when paternity leave is covered legally, they still have a cultural push where a woman is encouraged to take their maternity leave, but a man is not encouraged to take paternity leave. By doing this, they're really making women higher risk employees. They're turning women into less attractive employees because they are more likely to cost more when it comes to time off, lost productivity during that time, and the replacement workers or potential replacement workers if a woman does decide not to come back after maternity leave. The distinction just in this culture shift, just in what the company chooses to encourage or discourage, it really perpetuates the inequality that FMLA was specifically intending to negate. Now, there is some good news. So I want to discuss here a study in 2016 that shows that Americans by large are very supportive of the leave for both men and women. If you look at the first chart on the left, 96% of Americans in this study supported mothers receiving some sort of leave, and 85% supported fathers receiving leave. The right two columns are the paid leave categories. So this does decrease. 82% of surveyed Americans supported mothers getting some sort of paid leave, which of course FMLA does not currently entitle women to. And 69% did support fathers getting that paid leave. So these are still relatively high numbers compared to the fact that the US doesn't necessarily offer this. What I found very interesting is if you look at our chart to the right, this seems to be an age issue. So in the surveyed Americans over 65 years old, only 55% of them supported men receiving paid leave. However, in respondents ages 18 to 29, 82% supported the men receiving this paid leave. So you can see that as our generations get younger and younger, they are calling for more equality when it comes to parental leave. This gives me a lot of hope, and I think gives our country some hope that as these people enter the workforce, they begin in managerial and hopefully executive positions, some of these policies could change, assuming that their opinions don't change. So, one last thing to discuss is the international precedent for maternity and paternity leave and the standards that they set. In a study done comparing the United States to several international peers, there were 3 significant differences found between the US and this other group. The first significant difference is that these countries have significantly longer leave. On average, they had up to 10 months of leave for parents, both men and women, significantly longer. So the US offers 12 weeks of unpaid, and these countries were offering, on average, 10 months. The second significant difference was wage replacement. Obviously, I mentioned that ours is unpaid. In comparison, these other countries, almost every single other one does offer some sort of payment during that time. A few examples: Denmark offers 28 weeks, so more than 2 years of parental leave at 60% of their prior salary. Whereas Germany offers 14 weeks at 100% of their pay, and then an additional 3 years at a flat rate that's been determined by the company. So there are a lot of different ways that these countries have broken this down, but the major difference is they're paying their parents to go home and take care of their families and then return back to work. The third major difference is that in these countries, by and by, the laws are universal gender-neutral policies. So they both apply to men and women and are encouraged and utilized by both men and women. Hopefully, the United States can learn something from our international peers, as this really indicates to me how much room for improvement the U.S. has in our maternity leave policies. That includes our presentation for today. Thank you so much for your time.